Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, economist, and venture capitalist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion of the ongoing war in Israel and anti-Semitism is Len Carter. Len is an investment banker, business consultant, and private investor. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Carter.
Hello again. It's great to be back with you, my favorite people. My cohorts in this podcast. I really do appreciate your comments and your criticisms. You know, I usually don't like criticism, but it really helps enhance my wisdom. So being a voice of wisdom doesn't mean I know everything or I'm right about everything. I'm right about some things once in a while, like a busted clock.
Twice a day.
It's right twice a day. Yeah, so I'm right twice a day at least. Anyway, that's on good days. Anyway, before I launch into our, our agenda, our program, our current events, or what's going on that we choose to talk about. That's the goal of this podcast, to discuss and rediscuss what's happening, how we feel about it, what we could do about it, if anything, should we do anything about it? Is the United States doing the right thing? And what about the rest of the world? Is what we're doing jeopardizing our own country or our people or people in the rest of the world? So anyway, before I get into that, I want to touch, as I do, on something more personal, even more, that this current events affects all of us. The news affects all of us. But I want to address what affects you and I every day. And that's why I wrote this book. Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back. How to be happy no matter what. And to me, that's the goal that leaders should have. We should all have, like a family, that we care about each other. We make sacrifices for each other, like a family does. You know, if there's some member of the family that's sort of off in the wrong direction or suffering from some shortage of whatever, it may be food, it may be medical coverage, it may be something psychological. You know, a guy goes to a psychiatrist and he says to the psychiatrist, why are you here? The guy says, I feel inferior. He said, well, let's get on with it. Let's see what the problem is. So he listens to him for an hour, and at the end of the session, he says, you have no problem. He says, why? I feel inferior. He says, you are inferior. So that's you don't have a problem. That's the problem is not psychological. It's a real problem.
You're not paranoid if someone really is following you.
Right. So we all have problems every single day, some bigger, some lesser, some that we anticipate, most of which are ones that we anticipate or we worry about that hopefully never happen. But we worry about them. And so in this book, I try to tell you every single day of the year. It's 365 pages. It gives you encouragement, suggestions, humor, things that I think will help you be happier than you are and hopefully make your whole life happier. So my recommendation, if you want to be happy, is get a copy of this great book. I say it's a great book because I've been told by so many people who own it, who bought it, who got it as a gift, whatever, and I haven't had one critique that said, "Oh, it's full of bunk," or it's maybe there's somebody out there that's that's suffering the misery and has got their misery back, or it never left them. But it's a great investment, and I urge you to get a copy. And I'm so sure you like it because everybody who's ever called me, almost not everybody who owns the book called me, but many important people, bright people. I mentioned this before. One chief executive, president of a Fortune 100 company, I sent the book to, and he liked it so much. He sends it out. He tells me as a gift. He sends out thousands of gifts a year. He sends it out regularly now because most of the gifts he sends people, some of them call immediately and he says they thank me for the present. That's so nice of you to send it. But rarely does he ever get a call 6 months later or 3 months later or even a year later saying, thank you, I really appreciate it, that's the best gift I ever got or most helpful gift. And he tells me that in the case of this book that he loves, and I think I mentioned this to you, one time he was reading one of the 365 pages and he liked it so much, so he ran over to his wife and 2 sons who were watching a program on TV, and he walked over and turned off the program, and they start screaming, Dad, why do you do that? That's our favorite program. He said, I DVR'd it. Don't worry, you can watch it anytime you want. But I want to read you something that I think is great, and I enjoyed it, and I want to share it with you. And maybe if you like it, we can do this on a regular basis, because it's part of a book called Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back. So he tells me he read it to them, and now it's a custom of theirs. It's something they've introduced as part of their life. He either reads it to them separately, they sit down on the couch and he reads it to them, or while they're having dinner, he reads them a page. It's only one page, he says, I read it. And they like it. They look forward to it. They even ask if I don't bring it up right away. They say, Dad, what about today's lesson, today's page? So I'm telling you, get a copy. It'll help you. It won't solve all your problems. I haven't come up with any formula other than maybe going under the, what do you call it when they put you to sleep?
Anesthesia.
That could eliminate your problems, at least temporarily. I don't know of anything that other you're passing into the next world that will eliminate all your problems forever. So I'm so sure you like it based on the experience that I've learned from the people that own it and read it regularly. I'm so sure that you will appreciate it and think it's a good investment, that if you don't, I will, like so many TV programs say, we'll return your money. I'll do better than that. I'm so sure whatever you send me, your purchase slip, you don't even have to send me the book back. If you tell me, I take your word for it. You say I didn't enjoy it, or I didn't appreciate it, or I found it a waste of money, I will send you back not only your purchase price, whatever it says on that purchase slip, as long as it's a legitimate purchase slip, but double what you paid. So go out and get it, order it. It's on Amazon. It's on every great bookstore, I think. I haven't heard anybody complain that they haven't found it in the bookstore they went to. So I can't give you a better deal than that. And I hope nobody takes advantage of that offer by going out and buying 400 books and getting double your money back. It would be a great profit source. Anyway, before I start the program, I like to give you some insight about being happier or what causes unhappiness. There's not a day in my life, as long as I turn on the television or read the newspaper, that there isn't something in that media that I listen to or read, but that isn't depressing and a letdown and scary even about what's happening or what it implies will happen, the dangers that are forthcoming, or the tragedies that happened, whether it was a mass assault by a gun, somebody who owns a gun, or any kind of weapon that goes to a church, or a gathering of happy people dancing and enjoying each other, or wherever, sports event. It's just outrageous how depressing it is when you see the fathers or the mothers that had young children that are left orphaned by some madman's behavior. So, and there's not a day that passes, because the only news that's news is things that impress you as hurtful, as damaging, wars, tragedy, major tragedies, a bridge falling down, and the people on it getting killed, or the people working on it getting killed. You can't even imagine all the things that you anticipate or that you don't anticipate happening, that you read about. Maybe the best advice is just don't watch the media or read it. Like somebody said, everywhere he went, he kept reading these outdoor signs about cigarettes. Smoking is bad for your health. It's devastating for your health. It can give you cancer. It can give you all kind of heart trouble, brain disease, and so forth. And wherever I looked, there's these signs, and I kept reading them. So finally, one day I decided to give up reading. So the same you could do. If you want to avoid the bad news,
give up television.
Give up television, give up newspapers, give up magazines, give up, read the comic books, or humor books, or novels that are uplifting. But as the founder of Israel, what's his name? I'm not good at remembering names.
Ben-Gurion, Moshe
Ben-Gurion. Ben-Gurion. No, Moshe Dayan was a military leader. Ben-Gurion. Ben-Gurion, when asked, how are things in Israel, and it was always in some kind of trouble, either being attacked or being brought up for charges at the UN. It's brought up at the UN on charges more than all the rest of the countries, all the rest of the UN members put together. So when he was asked, how are things? He says, well, in one word, good, and in two words, not good. And that's really what the world is. You may be having good things, you get nachas and joy and pride from your children, and the next day or the same day from another child, or from that very same child, you get depressed and disappointed, and so that's a good thing. One word good and two words not good. But my approach for you is to make every experience good, every knowledge that you receive that may depress you, even bad things, smile, and even though it's depressing, say, oh, thank God it didn't happen. I'm sorry for those people, but thank God it didn't happen to my own family, my kids, the people I love. So that's not, it's not ignoring or dispensing with the tragedy that occurred. It's just that you don't choose to punish yourself and focus on it and think about it the rest of the day and the rest of the week and the rest of the month. And that goes even for personal tragedies. There's no way to overcome the suffering of a personal tragedy. Somebody loses somebody they love through illness, through accident, even through aging. Even if you lose a very old parent, you get very depressed because you miss that person very much in your life. But the thing is to enjoy, to realize how lucky you were to have had them in your life, and how you should focus on what the legacy they left you, on the wisdom that they gave you, on the love that they shared with you. So even from tragedies, you can focus on the positives. It's not easy, and I'm not saying you're going to be happy right that minute, but at least we don't do what most of us sadly tend to do. It's almost human nature that we delve on the tragedies in our lives. If we had a business failure, we say, oh, X, oh, damn it, if I only did this, if I only did that, it's always if, or why did it happen to me? God, why did you do this to me? So just, you make everything positive. You make sure that you stay optimistic and upbeat, and even if you see something negative in somebody you love and it depresses you, don't just focus on it. If there's something humanly possible to improve that, to change that, by all means do it, and or cope with whatever the situation is as best you can. But don't punish yourself. We punish ourselves. As I always say, if I go to a place, my wife and I go to a place for vacation, and we really didn't enjoy it. We found it negative, the help was nasty, whatever. There's lots of reasons why we found it a turnoff, more than a turnoff, more than a waste of money. We found it even painful. So we never go back there. You're never going to make a reservation there again unless you're nuts, unless you're a glutton for punishment, unless you're a masochist. So if you're a masochist, you'll go back all the time. But so the same with your mind, with your thinking. Don't let your mind go back to things that are hurtful. You're in control. Remember, you're in control. And remember, again, as I recently told you, you got to be so proud and hold your head up high. And when you realize and focus on that God said, I made you in my image. I made you in my image. So you walk around with your head high, and even though there's always going to be depressing things, I can't do anything about that. I can't write a book that promises you won't have depressing events, tragic events. If you live long enough, it would take a miracle. And I don't know if anybody ever went through life, even supposedly in Christianity, God's own son, Jesus, suffered more than, and the way we deal with that, or the Christians deal with that, and they say, well, Jesus chose to suffer that punishment on my behalf. So I'm not preaching Christianity or religion. I'm preaching that don't be the source of your own punishment. Think positively. And I say every week, the minute you start thinking negatively, the minute you start getting depressed and your mind is focusing on disappointments, on failures, on your kid did lousy at school, whatever, immediately, if you could do something about it, go to work on it as soon as you can and change it. But things don't change so quick, and even if you work at it hard, sometimes you could spend the rest of your life working on a problem that you want to solve and you can't do it. So what I do is when my mind goes in that direction, I immediately switch gears, shift gears. So I'll do something that makes me happy. I'll turn on a TV program that I remember I loved, or some comedy that makes me laugh, or I'll pick up a book, a novel that I hear is thrilling and exciting and uplifting, or whatever. Go visit your best friend or some close friend and interact with him and give him a lift, give yourself a lift through your interaction with him or her. Make love to your better half, your husband, your wife, or your significant significant other. There's things to do. What I do immediately when I get into that mode, I run down to my freezer in the kitchen and take out a quart of Haagen-Dazs chocolate ice cream, and I make myself a chocolate sundae. I take out a bunch of chocolate. I have a special glass that holds a chocolate sundae or any kind of sundae. I put some chocolate syrup on it, some chopped nuts, a lot of whipped cream, and a cherry. What kind of cherry is it?
Maraschino cherry.
Maraschino cherry on the top. And just looking at it and preparing it makes me happy. And then when I start eating it, I forget all about the misery I was dealing with, and I'm happy. So shift gears. Do that for yourself. You deserve it. You especially deserve it because you're made in the image of God, and enjoy your time in this world, because the one blessing we have is we're given life. And appreciate that, and every day count your blessings. If you do that, it forces you to figure out what your blessings are, and even better, if you have the time, write them down so you can see specifically and in black and white the blessing that you have. We all have blessings. Just breathing, just walking out into the air and seeing the sun or the moon or nature. As the song goes, you don't want to hear me sing because I get paid not to sing. But there's a song that the words are something like, the best things in life are free. The sun in the morning, the moon at night, the sand on the beach. I don't know all the words. My wife knows the words to every single song. And I all my life, I don't even know. There's one song that I remember the words to that I sing to my grandkids. This old man, number one, he played knick-knack on his stump with a knick-knack patty bag. Give the dog a bone, this old man came rolling home. This old man, number two. Anyway, I told you, you don't want to hear me sing. So go to a concert, go to a movie, do something that takes you away from that miserable place that you're in. As William James, who was a genius philosopher, he and his brother, I forget, Henry James, I think it was, were geniuses. And the one thing he pointed out is, thankfully, your mind can't delve on more than one thing at a time. So if you move it to something else, it gets you away from the depression, the downbeat. I won't tell you the story again about the father who has a very optimistic son, no matter what, is always happy, and the other son who is always depressed, and no matter what, nothing can make him happy. If you want to hear it again, I'll tell it to you, but I don't want you to have to suffer. It's really a great story and very uplifting. So we're going to get this program before long on live, so you could interact with your picture, talking to me, and my listening to you. And the best part of it is, if you like, you could turn me off. You could do that anyway. That's the great thing about radio and television. Somebody you're close to, your wife or your kids, you can't so readily turn off if they're getting you aggravated or depressed. Anyway, enough about happiness. Be happy, be happy. Don't worry, be happy. You're the boss. Your mind could only handle one thing. Make yourself happy. You're in charge. Remember, you were made in God's image. So hold your head up high, smile. It's hard to be depressed when you smile. And you can control that. You cannot control your emotions, James said, but you can control your actions, and your actions do determine your whether you're happy or not. So if you, even actresses and actors say, if they smile, if they're given a part where they're forced to laugh and smile, they're uplifted, they feel good. If they're given a part, even though it's just a part that was written in a novel and is now being played on the screen or in the theater, when they cry, that emotion, that's an action that they initiate, they feel depressed. So just smile, laugh, be happy.
But if you're going to be if you're going to be unhappy from the topics of the show, at least wait till after the show before turning it off and switching gears.
Just watch how lips move. You don't have to listen.
Because we frequently touch on topics that are not so happy around the world.
If you don't like the looks of my face or whatever, you could blank that part out. It's selective, with the television screen these days, you can block out any part of the screen you like. Anyway, enough of that. Be happy. Don't worry. You're in charge. My guest today, I'm pleased and proud and privileged to have on, is Len Carter.
Carter.
I'm not good at names. Sometimes I feel like the old guy that runs into a friend. It's not a friend. It's somebody who was in kindergarten. And he sees him and he still has the same face. And he walks up to him and he figures the guy won't remember him. So he says, "Hi, I'm Morty Davis." And the other guy says to him, "Wow, you're amazing. You still remember your own name." That's the way I feel, So Len Carter, I went back to Len Carter. Len Carter. I should remember it because for years there was a very popular product that was advertised, Carter's little liver pills. It presumably lifted your mood or did something to your liver that it was a very popular supplement or drug. So
if Carter can't lift your mood through pills, we can lift it through presence.
Okay.
His podcast presence
can depress you by
Yeah.
talking about the subjects that we're going to deal with that prevail, and you'll enjoy him, as I know for sure. Others have told me how much they enjoy him. That's why I keep inviting him back, being a cohort on this podcast. And he's really a genius because, like me, he graduated from Harvard Business School, the best business school in the world, I believe, although Stanford and Wharton and several others are excellent, Northwestern. But I believe till this day, Harvard gets the highest marks for being the best business school. And so he graduated with honors, as I did. I graduated what they call with distinction. And he also graduated from Cornell, a great Ivy League school, as an engineer, and then went to a fabulous college, Stanford University, to get a master's in engineering before I met him at Harvard. So even though he's much younger than me, I met him when I went to a reunion, and he was there, and I said hello to him. And that's when I decided someday I'm going to have to recruit this guy. So, Len, why don't you launch the program or the issues that we're going to discuss today?
Okay, so a lot of headlines, as we have every week. Today we want to circle back to what's been in the headlines for almost 6 months. The Gaza war between Hamas and Israel.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's almost 180
just
days.
About 6 months.
I didn't realize that.
April 7th would be 6 months. So
and
every day.
April 7th will also be the end of Ramadan.
So every day, more news, more events. So let's first talk about something that just happened earlier this week. So senior U.S. and Israeli officials had a virtual meeting to discuss potential military operations in Rafah, which is the big southern part of Gaza, where almost the entire population's been crammed into from evacuating from the north. So the U.S.'s goals...
I don't know if almost all of it, but a large part of it has moved there. At the urging of Israel.
Yes, so that
they
minimize any other casualties, right.
Dominant in the northern part, Israel, unlike any other country that I know of,
gave warning to get out.
It warns people to get out. We're going to be bombing or fighting in this area so they don't get hurt. It's amazing that Israel gets accused. Recently, Hamas accused Israel of the things that they did on October 7th, that the Israeli soldiers are raping their women, and it's just unbelievable how they turned the whole thing around. Anyway, go ahead.
So with a lot of the population migrating to the south, and that being the primary area left where Hamas militants are hiding, and in order to finish the mission, Israel somehow has to root them out from the south. And
the major leaders have migrated to that part of it.
Right, or left, or not even, or are in other countries.
Yeah, well,
the smart ones don't even want to stay.
Never were.
There in the beginning,
time
in Qatar or wherever they are.
Beach in
right.
Another part of the world.
Right. So
Dubai, Singapore, they're
so the issue that Israel's facing is how to execute this last part of the mission without incurring even greater
execute or carry out.
Yes. So the primary objectives in the U.S.'s words were to find, quote, alternative ways that Israel could achieve this goal of dismantling Hamas without launching a significant military operation into southern Gaza. So the first thing, I guess, is, the broad question, is that even possible? Are alternative ways? What would any kind of alternative ways be to do that? I mean, part of the issue, I guess, is that unlike what happened in Ukraine when Russia invaded Ukraine, Poland opened the borders and let millions of refugees from Ukraine into the West.
Yeah, not only Poland,
most of them. Well, they went into Poland and then into other countries.
Some other European countries.
They all did. All the EU took millions of people.
I think Israel even took in Ukrainians. So you're right, and sadly, all those at the border of Egypt, which is largely, I believe, still Muslim, and literally the Arab brothers of those people that are in danger, that Kamala Harris says, oh, they got no place to go. They're stuck there. So we have to stop the war, end the war, and so they don't realize that every country many countries at some point took in people, either their brethrens, their co-religious, religiousist, or just on a humanitarian basis, took in those that were tragically in this kind of situation,
displaced,
open their borders. The United States has, over the years, many times taken in asylum people that were having great difficulty in their country and being punished, being raped, being tortured. So you'd think that one of the countries around around Israel, around the Palestinian, what's it called, the West Bank, would open up their borders and take in their fellow Arabs, their fellow Muslims, or just on a humanitarian basis. And not one country, incidentally, Jewish people that lived in these adjacent countries for years, going back hundreds, if not thousands of years, that lived in Iran and in Iraq and in Lebanon, in Egypt, certainly it's a major part of the Old Testament that the Jews were in Egypt first as welcome guests through Joseph, and then later as slaves. So all around them, there were countries that could absorb them readily, or at least temporarily, and not one of them, including Egypt, which has been at peace with Israel and made a peace deal that served Israel well and Egypt well for now. It must be at least 40 or 50 years. And Egypt won't take them in, and Lebanon won't take them in, and Syria won't take them in. And Jews that were, as I said, were in those countries for eons, for ages, were literally kicked out, driven out of those countries, and are now pretty much, as the German said, Juden rein, clear of Jews. Reign is not reign like we think of it, but purely wiped clean. Juden reign. Juden is Jews. So those countries are mostly, even when they were accommodated, they were prevented from praying at synagogues and were sort of second, third class citizens. But anyway, they were forced to leave, especially when after Israel was set up. The Jews got a bad rap, even if they weren't in favor of Israel or if they weren't Zionists. And they were driven out of those countries. There's hardly any now that have synagogues there are many old synagogues, many old signs or indications of their historic presence in those countries. And over 1 million were taken in to Israel, a tiny country, just because they were fellow religionists. And because Israel's humanitarian, they took in Ethiopians, they took in, as I mentioned, Ukrainians. People don't realize Israel's very humanitarian. If there's something breaks out anywhere in the world, they're the first to send people. They volunteer their militia, not to fight, but to help the countries. They send doctors, they send ambulances, hospital equipment, surgeons, whether there's a tsunami or a flood or a fire or...
what I don't understand is why these,
I wanted to mention also, when war broke out in Ukraine, shortly after the Russians attacked and the Ukrainians were suffering so many deaths and injuries and cripplings, Israel sent ambulances, doctors, surgeons, and built a hospital in Ukraine. they have no affiliation. Yeah, there's some Jews in Ukraine, but they do that generally. They're doing it even in Haiti, where they have no. So if you check, you'll find that to be true. So if they could take in 1 million Jews from these Arab Muslim countries, and they took in over 1 million from Russia, from the Soviet Union, and many from Ethiopia and different parts of Africa. So why would Kamala Harris say Israel has to stop has to actually surrender, because if they end the war at this juncture, it's the end of the war that punished Israel, the citizens, not the military, on October 7th, that raped young girls and women and even older women, and cut off the heads of babies. I mean, I can't even define or express all the savage, monstrous things that were done on October 7th.
See, but what I don't understand is if these meetings and talks and discussions, they're between senior U.S. and Israeli officials. The problem, or the region, is greater than just Israel and U.S. Why aren't other Arab countries who could potentially play a role in a humanitarian relief where they take in some refugees? Why aren't they? Where are they in the discussions?
Isn't that what I just asked?
Well, but why?
Contrary to what Kamala Harris puts the onus on.
But why aren't they in the discussions? I mean, it's like they have these meetings. I mean, that's what's happening. But why doesn't the U.S. draw them in? That's my question. I mean, I know they're not there, but it's why?
Qatar has been a major participant. Egypt has been a participant recently. It's not that bringing them on would help if they're not ready to make a deal that makes any sense. What Hamas has done is whatever Israel agrees to, giving 800 killers, people who have murdered, terrorists, 800 people in return for 100 or less hostages. They agreed to a ceasefire temporarily so that they can replenish whatever food is needed in the. I mean, how do you make a deal with somebody where you offer them everything that they want, and the other side says comes back and says no, and you can't make a one-sided deal. It's the same with the two-state solutions. Israel over the years has had so many meetings and so many attempts to literally ensure that they have their own state, and these Palestinians, who we say give them their own country, have rejected every approach and have never even made a gesture. Israel's given back Gaza without asking anything. As a matter of fact, they had to drive out their own Israeli people that had businesses there and everything to turn it over to, without any conditions, to the Palestinians, turns out to Hamas, to the Arabs, to the Muslims. that Israel made a deal with Egypt to give them back the Sinai that they had won in the Yom Kippur War, even though they were attacked. They turned back some border dispute that they had with Lebanon, and they turned back some disputed land. So Israel's not only made gestures, they've done things that demonstrate that they want to have peace with the Palestinians, and they've had other opportunities because the UN at the time they set up Israel, the state of Israel, offered the Palestinians their own state too, their own territory, and the Palestinians didn't even come back and negotiate and say, okay, we'll do it if you add this or take away this or cut out this part of Israel maybe. They just rejected it. So you can't give them a state if they don't want a state. What they have expressed, Hamas has expressed it in their charter, saying our goal is to wipe out Israel and kill the Jews and kill all the Jews. And so, how are you going to make a deal with a country that if you're willing to give them everything, but they said, no, we want your country, we want you out of. A number of those countries have world maps that don't have Israel on their maps. That's their attitude. And we find now that they didn't know it before. It was pretty well known. But they find out now UNRWA that worked there, that was placed there by the UN and the world and contributed over the years billions, not millions, hundreds of millions, billions, to keep Gaza at least economically viable, because in all this time they haven't built any businesses, they haven't developed it. They could have developed it into a beautiful, like Dubai. There are beaches there. They could have done a lot with it. They could have made it like Singapore. They did nothing. So the UN provided through UNRWA personnel, thousands of personnel to work there, to help them, nurses, doctors, food, income. There was, I think, something like at one point, and maybe it still exists, close to 80% unemployment. They never built it up. And UNRWA, which, became close to them, really integrated with them and became like part of the Hamas and the population that occupied Gaza, that occupies unoccupied. And they were preparing the textbooks, and they were the teachers of the kids in Gaza, of the Muslim and Arab kids. And the textbooks say it doesn't stress how important life is, or it says it's important to die for Allah and to kill Jews. That's part of our assignment. And if you do all those things, and I believe Christians too, because that's what they tend to do, at least the radical ones, the ISIS. And there was one city in Iraq where they told all the non-Muslims, mostly Christians, that unless they converted immediately to Muslims, they would kill them, or they could immediately leave and carry out whatever possessions they have, or convert to Muslim. Three choices: get killed, convert to Muslim, to Islam, or leave all their possessions, their automobiles, their life's precious collections, memories. And so a lot of them, to save their own lives, left and cried about what they had to leave behind. A number of them, a significant number, converted, and a significant number were killed because they wouldn't convert. So that's what they're being taught in Gaza from the time they're little kids. So how do you get them to make peace with somebody that they're thought of as they're taught are monsters and need to be wiped off the face of the earth? And that's what Allah wants, you know.
So let's talk about something that complicates, from Israel's point of view, the war effort, which is hostages. So protests this past weekend, thousands took to the streets in Jerusalem to call for the removal of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Demonstrators are angry that Netanyahu and his government, haven't secured the release of all the hostages yet that were taken captive on October 7th. 105 have been released, but somewhere, 130 or more were kidnapped.
They were released in a deal to cease fighting and for many more
Palestinian prisoners, right?
Hamas prisoners, many more.
So another 130 are either dead or still being held by Hamas and other militants. So the big question is, should Israel prioritize hostage rescue over defeat of Hamas?
Well, in a way, it's sad to say, but if my kid was a hostage, or my mother or father, I would feel the same way as those protesters. I don't care about the country. I don't care about anything. I don't care that every day there are young soldiers, men and women, losing their lives to save the country. But these 130 people have to be saved no matter what. And Israel's sort of made that deal. They said, I don't know how you could give a better deal than this. If you return 130 or any part of them to Israel, return them out of Hamas's control, out of Gaza, we will agree to turn over 800 prisoners that we hold that are serving life sentences for murder, for terrorism, for the worst things. How can you, and they say Netanyahu is not doing the right thing, has to do more. What more could he do? Turn over the country?
Well, but if you don't prioritize the hostages over the defeat, like if there were no hostages, this would probably be over already.
Why?
Because Israel would have been, I think, much more aggressive, much more forceful, and would have just come in, and we wouldn't be sitting here 6 months later. So if you had the view not to prioritize the hostages, then I think you could end it more quickly. So it seems like they are trying to, they are putting some priority on hostages. Should they? Or should they just say, unfortunately, there are casualties of war, and it's best in the long run for the overall population to defeat Hamas quickly, and unfortunately, we might lose some hostages as we do soldiers and others in any wartime. I think that's the big question.
Look, as I said, I understand the people that are protesting that have family members husbands, wives, daughters, fiancés, whatever, feeling that there's nothing more important. And if it was my kid, there's nothing more important. I don't care about the country. I don't care about. I mean, I care.
Right, but that's the position of the parents.
Wait.
The people who run the government have to care about the country.
So let me finish. If we made that deal, they return the hostages, and we give them 800 plus other things, stop in essence, end the war
permanently, or just temporarily.
Well,
because the last time it was a temporary ceasefire.
Now they want
right.
So they want a deal that you can't give them more. Bibi Netanyahu should say, "You tell me what you want me to do." Who?
He asked that to whom?
Of the people that are protesting that prioritize. More than that, don't you think? I think so, that if they return 800 of those prisoners and Israel gets back 135 hostages, that more people will be killed by those 800, more Israelis, citizens will be killed by those 800, or will be taken hostages. More Israelis will be taken. It's easy to take hostages. You go across the border, maybe you don't do it at the same place, and they'd have hostages again. They know, look, Getty, who was the wealthiest man in the world, his grandchild was kidnapped. They said, we're going to send you the kidnappers. He didn't pay yet. They said, we're going to send you his ear. He said, I'm not paying. And I don't think that was, he's not my hero, because it seems like money was more important than his grandchild. But you have to recognize that once you do that, and Israel has done that, that's why they know it works. Once you do that, you're subject.
So why isn't Netanyahu pointing that out and then just saying?
Because Israel's always been stupid in their PR and stupid in what they say.
But Netanyahu
should say that.
I've
offered them everything. What do you want me to do? I've offered them. You want me to offer them the country? What do you want me to do? I don't understand. If somebody got a good idea, if the United States has a good idea, Kamala has a good idea. She says, give up.
I think you're right. But this is going, I mean, at some point.
Wait, are you sure you got a
But at some point, you have to say, after 6 months, we're going to have to sacrifice some hostages.
Yeah, that's right.
But he's not doing that.
He doesn't have to articulate that.
But he's not doing it in action.
What do you mean?
We're 6 months, and
he's in good faith, and also I think negligently, and I don't want to say stupidly, but it is stupid that you're running the whole country and the consequences that may occur for these few families. And I don't want to minimize how important the hostages are and how little they deserve the punishment they're going through. You have to say, I think
there's definitely a PR component to this, where it hasn't been done that well. I definitely think that's the case. I've never heard Netanyahu articulate something like that, which I think would be good for him to do.
Not only that, Israel doesn't have good PR, and Hamas is benefiting enormously. Why should they do anything? Yeah. The whole world is blaming Israel. You'd never know that Israel was attacked, or that Israel, and Netanyahu was saying to the Americans even, I have to attack Rafah because the last divisions and
Yeah.
the last leadership, important leadership is there. And for me to end this perennial war or torture or exposure to this kind of...
I mean, maybe they will do it because, as you said, Ramadan is not over. So maybe they're going to step it up after next week when the holiday is over.
I agree. It may sound cruel or whatever, but I agree that even if you have a ceasefire, that you have to end Hamas ever being viable. Because look what they did. And they'll do it again. And Israel's been through this several times. Even before they did this, every day Israelis were running into bomb shelters because rockets were coming over, and that's no way to live. If we were getting rockets from Mexico every day, would we just stand by and let it happen? Israel didn't attack.
So what about the elections? I mean, if these protesters over the weekend are calling for early elections, normally, if you the scheduled elections are 2026, so that's like 2.5 years from now. So, but there could be early elections if let's say a majority of Israelis wanted early elections. Should you have early elections?
Okay.
Or should you just stay on the cycle?
Let me address that. First of all, the reason that the people that want the hostages back, the families, and others, caring people, as a matter of fact, all of Israel wants them back. They're well intended. They care about these people. There's no reason why they should be held hostage or suffering. But the reason they're saying we want Bibi Netanyahu out and elections is because he's not doing enough. If somebody else came in, if we got somebody else in, and that's ridiculous. Not only that, I don't know what options Netanyahu has. It's sad that he's under indictment, and so they attribute his insistence in staying there as the leader to his avoiding getting jailed, possibly. And that may be a factor, but it's said that because he's doing the right thing given the circumstances. And also, when you have an election, as he points out, in the middle of a war, then there's no leadership. It takes 6 months to organize an election and to campaign and so forth. So they're not offering a solution. And all those that sympathize with the families of the hostages, a lot of Israelis, overwhelmingly, are in favor of getting their hostages back. But, their good intentions don't help solve the problem.
And it's definitely easy.
And I don't know that Netanyahu is 1,000% right, that once and for all, especially after it should have been done before, when they were launching every day hundreds of, and not too many were killed because the Israelis knocked them down with the iron, what is it called?
Iron Dome.
With the Iron Dome. And also people immediately heard sirens and ran into bomb shelters. But, how do you tolerate living like that if Mexico was doing that to this country? And also, what did they say about why doesn't Israel, just a while back, they said, why doesn't Israel do what? I was going to ask, Why didn't we do that in Vietnam or in other countries? Why didn't we? Or what they say Israel should do?
But it's very easy politically, to say the opponent's not doing a good job. But the reality is, I'm not sure any other leader could do anything.
He's not their
different.
Opponent.
But listen to this. So
why do you use opponent?
No, because this is what opposition leader. This is what Yair Lapid, the opposition leader, said. So he says Israel should not agree to a deal, quote, at any price. There are prices Israel cannot pay. But if we don't get the hostages back, it won't be a victory. So, I mean, if he were prime minister tomorrow, what is he saying to do that would?
It's a stupid statement.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it's easy just to say, well, he's not doing it right, I'll do it right. But what are you going to do?
If Israel got the hostages back, it certainly wouldn't be a victory. It might be a short-term high. Everybody's
but he's the one saying you can't pay any price, meaning you can't have a ceasefire.
Yes, so what are they going to replace him with?
That's what I'm saying. That's how silly this is, because that's what it's just politics. In reality, so even if people wanted an election, it's just because like people are frustrated, and we see it here in the U.S. Right? People always they don't like the current president or administration, and they think, well, anything's got to be better than this. So they go to the other one, and it's basically the same because there's no magic solution.
It is all political because there's never been a war that's been so diced and analyzed, and every day, whatever happens, they attack a hospital. So the world says Israel's attacking a hospital. They disregard the fact that they use the hospital for headquarters.
Right. Well, it's not really a it
is a hospital. They were doing,
but under Geneva Convention, it loses its status as a hospital if it's really a military base.
But Israel is suffering enormously in terms of the rest of the world's attitude towards Israel. The UN, I don't know what I don't know what the UN has done. It was well-intentioned, just like the League of Nations. I don't know what they've done since they've been established that makes them an important, a meaningful, even forget important, meaningful organization that we should keep backing them, supporting them with billions of dollars. They don't have an army. They can't stop wars. I don't know what's the reason.
Right. That's a good question.
The best reason is that they could bring up Israel on charges on regular, even though the UN set up Israel as a Jewish state and should be protecting what they themselves established. It's beyond Ken.
Well,
beyond logic.
We've run over time a little bit, but we will be able to maybe next week continue because there's some other topics related to Israel and
like what?
Their draft, their war, and then also how what's
the drafting of people that are
so that's
students,
and then how the U.S. is reacting and students and universities. So we'll finish the discussion next week, I think. But
incidentally, you're too young to know this, or maybe you do know because you study history. But during the Second World War, we what's the word? We waived. It's not waived. We dismissed students,
exempted
students
Yeah.
that were studying at universities.
Yeah.
Or,
Well, Vietnam too.
yeah, so
I think we've always had this. No,
Did we?
when was it not? I don't know.
I don't know.
thought there was
Maybe
always
the Civil War. No, so I'm saying, but my tendency, even though I identify strongly with the Orthodox Jewish community, I think that they should serve when their fellow brothers and sisters are called to lose their lives. They should do some service if they don't want to be at the front lines and kill people.
All right.
But
so that's a teaser for our coming discussion. Right. Tune in next week. And thank you for having me here again. And
thank you for coming. You always add excitement and aggravation for me. Anyway, thank you for being, and thank you all for joining us. I love you all. I wish you everything wonderful every day of your lives. I wish for you, for each of you, each day of your life should be better than the day before until eternity. So have a great day, have a great week, have a great year, have a great life. And I look forward to being with you a week from this hour. Next Wednesday at 6:30.
Yep.
Bye.